Hello, today's class is going to be a myofascial release class. And I realize some people just don't really understand what that means. Myo just means muscle. Fascial is just fascia, which is this connective tissue, connects muscles and bones that runs throughout our entire body. So it's just a form of self-massage to massage the muscles and the fascia, if you find that to be helpful. So I'm going to have two things available today. I'm going to have a foam roller and my myofascial release balls. You don't have to have either of those. You could use a pair of rolled up socks. You're not going to get the same firmness as the balls, but you can still kind of hit some points with that if you'd like to try it. So we're going to do sort of the front side of the body today. I'm going to scooch back here onto my mat, and we'll actually just start seated here. We'll start with the eyes closed, just taking some breaths to get centered before we start to use our tools. Just take an inhale here, and exhale. Inhale and exhale. You can open your eyes. We'll start just using our fingertips at the temples here and just start to make gentle circles with the fingertips. So you're giving yourself this little massage, and you can move the fingers around any direction that feels good. I kind of like to take them back so they're over my ears and kind of more on the sides of my head, even up towards the top of the head. So you can just explore here for a little bit, maybe even going to the back of the head. To me, it's kind of like shampooing my hair. It's better when someone else does it. I'm getting my hair done, but it feels nice to give a little bit of attention to this area. And take one more breath wherever you are. Inhale through the nose and exhale out the mouth. And just release your hands down to your knees. Just take some shoulder rolls here. Give our hands just a little break here before we move to the next spot. Shoulder rolls opposite direction. And let the shoulders settle. Take the right hand to your collarbone, left hand to your sternum. So you're creating this little finger corner with your fingertips. And then take your left hand right to the corner. So just inside the fingertips. I'm sorry, that's your left hand. Is that what I said? And then drop your right hand down. So you're right below the collarbone, lateral to the sternum. There's not a huge amount of soft tissue right there, depending on your body. And just take little circles there with the fingertips. This gets kind of the big pec muscle here, close to the attachment. A lot of us tend to be a little tight or tender here. And then find some stillness. Press the fingers back towards the back of the mat and then down towards the mat. So in and down. Keep that pinning of the tissue as you take your chin up and away over to the left. And oh, and immediately as I do that, I start to feel that stretch there across kind of the front side of the neck down to where my fingers are. Some people don't feel much here. For me, once I move my head, it's pretty pronounced. So if you don't feel much, there's nothing wrong with you. And then return your head back forward, release that hand down, and then just release the fingers behind the back. Take a little clasp, and as you do that, notice how the right and the left sides of the chest feel, right below the collarbone there. And then we'll change sides, left hand to collarbone, right hand to sternum, finding that little inside corner of the fingertips, right fingertips going there. You can let the left hand drop. And start with some circles here of the fingertips. We're gonna move around. All of this is intuitive. So if you find a spot right where you think I tell you and that doesn't feel very good, move side to side or up or down. I think once you feel comfortable with the idea of this, it feels pretty natural. So find a spot, press back and down with the fingertips so you're pinning that tissue, and then take the head up and away over to your right. Just a couple breaths right here, seeing if you can let that left shoulder relax. And then just bring the head to center, release the hand. Take that clasp one more time of the hands behind the back, and notice how the front of the chest feels now between the two sides. Maybe it's more similar. And then release the hands. Oh, I didn't mention this, but I just decided I want to use the block. So hopefully you have a block. Most of you I know have blocks at home. So we'll take the block on the medium setting. And we're going to take the armpit onto the block. So for some people, this feels a little tender. You can always just drape a blanket over to soften the edges here. In fact, I think that's what I'm going to do today. So roll onto your right side. I'm going to look like I'm not mirroring you, but you'll be laying on your right side with your right armpit on the block and resting your head in your right hand. So you want that block kind of in the center of your armpit. And again, you can kind of move around and see what feels most comfortable for you. Your left hand can rest in front of you. We're just going to rock forward so your left shoulder comes towards the mat, and then bring that shoulder back up and back a little bit. So we're just rocking front to back on the armpit here. So gently lean it forward and take it back. And forward and back. And then this time when you come forward, we're going to pause there. So I like to drop my left forearm down to the mat for a little support for my upper body. And then if you have another block, I know I'm just adding all these props that I didn't tell you to get. I like to put my block on the medium height and rest my forehead there. It's not required, so if you don't have one, you can just stay a little more upright. And just take an inhale and an exhale. One more inhale and exhale. And then use your left palm to gently press yourself up. Let's come back to seated before we do the other side and interlace the fingers behind the back end again. And just notice how now not only that space underneath the collarbones, but that right armpit might feel different than the left armpit. It certainly does for me. And then we'll change sides. You can just roll so you're facing the opposite direction, but I'm going to move everything so I can continue to see you. So coming onto your left side this time. Again, center of the armpits resting on that block, and you can rest your head in that left hand. Sometimes you just kind of wiggle around a little bit here. And then right hand rests down and start to rock back and forth. So right shoulder comes forward, so your chest comes more parallel to the mat. And roll back through the center of the armpit and to the back of the armpit. And rocking back and forth. So as we come forward, we're getting more of the pec tissue for that muscle in the front. And as we go back, we're getting a little bit towards your lats, which maybe you've heard of your lats if you ever have gone to the gym and done like a lat pull down. I think most of us have at least heard of that. And then the next time you're forward, we're going to pause there. Remember, you can drop to that right forearm if you'd like, or take that block under the forehead. I know this is a place, sometimes it's hard to relax. It may take you a couple of breaths. So just take an inhale and an exhale. And then inhale and exhale. And just take one more breath here. And then use your right hand to gently lift yourself up. You can take your blocks, maybe blanket if you have one, off to the side. And let's one last time interlace the fingers behind the back here and just notice how that feels. Ooh, I feel much more open there. Hope you feel something good when you do that. And then release that and reach for your myofascial release balls or your parasocs, whatever you have. If you have them in a little bag, you can take them out. And then we're going to do this part of the lower leg here. We're just going to feel it with our fingertips first so we can see what this feels like. So hug your right knee towards your chest. Of course, I'm wearing all dark colors, but use your fingertips to feel your right shin across the front of the lower leg. And then take your fingertips away from each other. So you start to feel the muscles that run along the shin, medially and laterally. So along the sides of the shin. And then we're going to go laterally. So outside of the shin bone here, you can feel that muscle. So I'm going to the right of the shin bone. And then we're going to go right below the knee. So roughly right here, I think you can kind of see that is where we're aiming for. And we're going to do this kneeling with both balls at the same time. So it's a little tricky to get into. You can just come here to sitting on your heels. And now we're going to try and find that spot with both these balls. So finding the shin bone, going outside of the shin bone, right below the knee. And there was a period of time where this is pretty tender for me. So I sometimes would like to explore the position of my hands. So actually taking the hands forward puts a little more weight into those balls. So for me today, that feels more intense. So you can come up out of it. If you want a little weight off the balls, hands could go back a little bit. So you have choices here just to explore. And you have just a handful of breaths here. This is one of my favorite spots. You can get to it a couple different ways, but it's not an area we think about very often, for sure. It's not a place we like stretch in yoga, like if you think of how we stretch our hamstrings, for instance. But I find for a lot of people, this spot can feel a little tender. And once you do this, you might feel like, oh, that was nice. I hope so. You have a couple more breaths right here. And then slowly you can remove the balls. Just come back to seated here. Extend your legs in front of you. Point and flex your feet. And as you do that, let's go ahead and place the balls back into their little bag, if you have one. And if you can do that while you're noticing how the front of your shoes feel, or that spot we just worked, that would be nice too. So you notice that feels interesting. We didn't do this movement before, so I don't know, you don't know what it feels like before we did that, but nonetheless. Okay, now we're going to do the thigh muscles here. And this is why I'm going to use a foam roller. Again, if you don't have one, it's okay. You can use the balls. I just find the balls to be a little intense because my quads are really, really tight. So if you have the balls, you're going to take them like this in the bag, so horizontal to the floor, right above your knee, and you're going to be rolling up and down like this. I'm going to be using the foam roller, so you can just do what I'm doing with the balls. Now the other thing, gosh, another prop that I didn't mention is I like to do this on a bolster, again, because my quads are pretty tight and it takes some of the intensity out of this. So you can do this without the bolster. I'm going to come into it. So we're going to do the right thigh first. So I'm gonna take the foam roller right above my knee, if you can see that. And I kind of like to take my left shin to the mat. Now, if you don't have the foam roller, remember you can use the balls right where I have that foam roller. And I'm gonna turn the other way so you can see me better. And again, I like to put my weight onto this bolster. So if you don't have it, forearms are on the mat. And then from there, you're gonna roll that foam roller or the balls up towards the hip crease and then back down towards the top of the knee. So you're just rolling up and down the length of the thigh here. If you're using a bolster, it takes a little bit of playing just to figure out where it should be. And I want you to see if you can just find a spot that feels nice to land. So for me, it's kind of a third of the way between my hip and my knee. Might be a different spot for you. And then we're just gonna hold. See if you can relax. If you're like me, it's tricky on this spot, so we really have to breathe. You can actually probably tell I get a little out of breath, especially when I'm talking, because this is a place I really need to focus. Now for me, this is intense enough where it is. I'm not going to do anything else, but except to show you. If you want, you're going to lift your right foot, bend that knee, and then let that foot relax. And you'll just bend the knee, lift the foot, lower it down. Do that maybe 4 or 5 times. And if you're still moving your leg, just extend it straight out. And then we're gently going to come up off our props here. You can just take your props to the side for a moment or in front of you and then sit on your heels. And notice how the right and the left side feel. For me, they feel pretty different after doing that. You can even walk your hands gently back and take your shoulders back, maybe getting a little stretch across the quads and noticing what that feels like. And then we'll take the second side here. So this one I feel like always takes a little bit of time to figure out how to get into. So move your props, whatever you have. Forearms are either to the mat or to a bolster, and then start to roll up and down along the length of that thigh. This one I just think in general is awkward. Like not so awkward for me because my right hip is pretty flexible, so my right leg is pretty supportive, but I know for some people, the right leg is doing something weird. It doesn't really matter where that right leg is, as long as you're feeling supported as you roll up and down. And then you're gonna find that place to land and be still. And it might be a different spot. The spot where I was on my right thigh is way too intense on my left thigh. So just move the foam roller up towards my waist a little bit. I think doing this work helps us really become in tune with our bodies, which is really helpful. If you took that movement on the first side, you can do it here, lifting the foot and then lowering it down. And just several more breaths right here. And then slowly make your way off your props. If you have a bolster, you can take it out of the way. If you had a foam roller, you could take it off to the side. You're not going to use that again. And then same thing we did after the first side. Sit on the heels. Notice how the thighs feel. Maybe take the hands back. And then you can come upright, come to seated. We're gonna take the balls out of this little bag again. We're actually gonna come to the belly here. And I find that some people find this one to be really uncomfortable. So one more prop, I should have just said get every prop you own at the beginning of class, I didn't. You can use a rolled up blanket for these. So I'm gonna show you the 2 points we're gonna do first with the balls, and then I'll show you what to do with the blanket if that feels too intense. I hated doing the balls in this abdominal area in the beginning because I was very tense. But once I learned how to just kind of relax, it actually felt really nice. So I don't want you to be in pain. Pain is never the option or the goal, but know that it might just take some time to get used to it. So please be careful and just do what feels right for you today. So I'm gonna come to kneeling, and you can do this with me because it's hard to see this once we're on the belly. So we're just gonna find the 2 points first. So I want you to find your hip bones with those balls. And then you're gonna take the balls towards each other, just an inch off the hip bone. So I was on the hip bone, just rolled in slightly. We'll be on the belly. This is the first point. And then the second point, you're gonna find your belly button. Take the ball an inch below the belly button, and then take the balls about an inch away from each other, an inch or two, something like that. So an inch below the belly button, balls just a little bit away from each other. Now, if you get on the balls and that doesn't feel good, you're gonna roll a little burrito in your blanket and place it across your low belly, and you'll stay there for both of these variations. So let's go on to the belly. And come into like a little sphinx pose, so you're on your forearms to start. And then we'll start finding the hip bone and taking that ball in towards the midline about an inch and tucking both balls in. So we're gonna do both sides at the same time here. So your balls are the same line with your hip bones, but in towards the midline of the body about an inch. And I know that's hard to see, you can't see me, it's impossible to see me. So hopefully that made sense. Now you have a couple choices with your upper body. You can use your hands as a pillow, rest your forehead down. I find that to be less intense. If you want, you can be back in that sphinx position with your forearms on the mat. I find that to be more intense. So you decide, again, if you get on those balls and you're like, that is not for me, roll up the folded edge of your blanket, place it along the mat, and you'll have the lower part of the belly resting on that roll. And I suggest it being a pretty small roll of the blanket if you're doing that. Doesn't need to be huge. And then wherever you are, just take an inhale, feel how the belly expands naturally. You don't have to make that happen. And exhale, feel the belly soften. And just notice what happens with the balls here as you do this. Inhale, feel the expansion. Exhale, feel the softening, and maybe the area where those balls is resting relaxes a little. And maybe it doesn't if this is new to you. Take a couple more breaths here. And then we'll move on to that second location. If you're on the blanket, you can just stay where you are. If you have the balls, you can remove them for a moment. Find your belly button with one of the balls and then go below the belly button an inch. And then you'll tuck both balls down there an inch below the belly button, and balls will be maybe an inch or two away from one another. Same thing, hands can stack as a pillow, rest the forehead down, or you can be on the forearms. I find this one to be a little more intense, so I'm gonna drop my head here. And then see if you can do the same thing that we did in the first position. Inhale, expand the belly, and exhale, soften. And just do that with the own rhythm of your own breath. And then from there, you can just remove whatever prop you're using, take it over to the side. Stack your hands underneath your forehead like a pillow, bend to the knees, and just windshield wiper the feet side to side. And then extend the legs straight out. Come back to a Sphinx pose here, forearms to the mat. Just notice how the front side of the body feels after that. For me, that always feels just a little looser and lighter, less compressed. Lots of words you can use to describe any of this. All right, lower the head and shoulders down, hands by the sides of the rib cage. Just take some cat-cow here. This is the last movement before we take Shavasana. So maybe just a really gentle cat-cow, noticing how the front side of the body feels, that space beneath the collarbones, the front of the armpits, the belly, right inside the hip bones there. And from there, you can come to seated, just so you can make your way all the way onto your back. Hug your knees in, take a little rock side to side. And then just extend your legs straight out, coming into your Shavasana here, any place that's comfortable on your back. And just notice how the whole front of your body feels. Everything's connected. So everything we just did connects to each other in some way. For me, the whole front side of the body feels open and relaxed. For you, it might be something different, especially if this is new to you and you've never done it before. There's no wrong way to feel. And start to deepen your breath a little bit. Wiggle your fingers and your toes. And circle your ankles and wrists. Reach your arms by the ears, nice big stretch. And roll off to one side, pause there, eyes closed. Yoga is not for the flexible, it is for the willing. One thing I have learned over time with yoga is that my practice changes over time, my interest changes over time, but I love that there are so many facets of this practice that are available to me, whether it's stretching or flowing or doing a self-massage. Have all these tools to meet me wherever I am on any given day, and I hope that you feel the same way. Press into your top hand, make your way all the way up to a comfortable seat, eyes closed, hands at the heart. Have a wonderful rest of your day. The light in me honors the light in you. Namaste. Thank you. I hope you feel good, and I will see you next time.